All right, so let's come back together. And what we've done so far is we have, I hope everyone has written down the outline for the introduction. So that I had in the Word document. Uh-oh, why is this not? Okay, there it is. So I'm going to try using this .cam. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it won't work. But I'm just going to kind of start with using the, writing the strategy paragraphs. So these are going to be the body paragraphs. So you have your introduction. And then we have the information that you have there, and you have your body. And then when you have strategies, you actually have a good amount of information about what you need to be putting when you write there. And some of that is going to come from the handout that you did where you are writing for the final, and this bottom quote, what it says is, so what I would recommend is that you approach this by stating one strategy in one paragraph, quote the use of that strategy, and then provide an explanation of why you think the author is using that strategy. Again, what does the author want the audience to know or do? So we've got so what do you do first? That's the second thing you do. So you state the strategy. And then the next thing you're going to do is that quote. You can also use a paraphrase or summary that points to the text about where you are getting that strategy, what demonstrates that strategy. And then what's the next thing you do? Yeah, so you're going to explain why author use, and I'm using bad grammar and everything now, but why author use strategy. So why does the author use that strategy? And I think that I've talked about like a few times like pie paragraphs where you have the point, you have the information, you have the explanation. So your point is this is the strategy. The information is the evidence from the article, and then the explanation is, well, the explanation of why the author is using that. Pie. P-I-E. Pie. Like point, information, explanation. Yeah. Pie. Yeah. Pie paragraph. So point. That's a good idea. Yeah. I think that you should be including that. Thinking about like why the author used that strategy. Would the audience find that particularly convincing? So like, especially like if you're thinking about like a nationally distributed article, they're going to use national examples. If it's like a local article or a local paper, like they may say like, oh, the store downtown that everyone goes to, then, that's going to be, because it's for that particular town or school or whatever, it's going to be distributed that way. They're going to be thinking about their audience. So I think, including the audience is a good idea. I'm going to put that in parentheses. All right, so we've got strategies. Next, we have everyone's favorite, assumptions. Yeah. Assumptions. Have you guys heard like assume makes an ass of you and me? Okay, yeah, because like it makes an ass of you, and me. You don't have the e here, but ass of you and me. Assume, yeah. So don't assume. Except you need to think of you need to think about what the author does assume here. And for me, like it took a little while to think about like how do the best way to find the assumptions. And I talked a little bit about this on Tuesday, and I'll kind of reinforce some of that today because I think that there still might be some questions out there about it. And the explanation that I've included is like what you get in the article is going to be like, what hints are given that reflect ideologies or values that the author expects the intended audience to have. So there's going to be like, what has the author not written? Which is harder to find what the author hasn't written than what the author has written. But this is how I find it. The first place my brain goes is, what would a skeptic or critic say? Like, who's reading the article and says, but what about this idea? What about this? So, and what helps me think about that is, what would you find in the comment section if like this is posted online from someone who doesn't like this article? And then that's going to be the thinking process you do. So thinking process is A, so that you can get B. What thinking or values does the audience have that clashes with the aforementioned response? So what's the opposite? What's the response that someone would give? And on the back of the grading paper, let me see, I hate, this thing isn't that great. The grading, you have these examples of, or this process to help you kind of think about like what the assumptions are, because I've given the different articles, and here's like some proposals for A. So what is B? What is the response? So Parker was talking about, Silicon Valley saying like, how it's hurting like, Silicon Valley is, perpetuating some of our worst vices, and things are getting worse. So what someone who reads that article, who doesn't agree with that, they might think, no, things are getting better. Trump's election demonstrates a good trend, not a dumbing down. We need things to improve. So maybe someone who votes for Trump, like, would really disagree with that article and be kind of offended that, like, oh, things are getting worse? No, they're not. So this is what they would say. So what does that show about, like, what we think? What the audience, what that author and what that audience think? What's kind of the shared mentality that they have? What clashes with this idea?
So, like, Trump is everything Trump got elected, everything got worse.
Kind of. I mean, things were like kind of getting like, the election cycle that led up to Trump led to like society getting worse. So yeah, this like idea of the election cycle that led to Trump's election indicates, things getting worse, like society not improving. So that's kind of one of those like underlying assumptions. It's not the only one, but that's kind of one of them. And then we've got this, I want to look at the bottom article, which is saying that it's Pulsar. So Pulsar was talking about how like social media was being used a lot after the earthquake in Haiti, and that it was still much more important to have the things like like journalists reading and understanding and interpreting the news. So maybe someone who reads that article, they say, oh, but people relate more to individual stories that can be found on social media, and as a result will be more motivated to take action than if they read a news story. This is because news stories distill things in a boring way people can't relate to. So that could be a criticism. So what would someone say? Like, what does that say about the assumptions? What does that say about the values of the intended audience for Pulsar? Any ideas? What's the opposite of this? What's the response to this?
People don't relate to social media.
Yeah, so people maybe, yeah, you could say that people don't relate well to social media. I'm going to put SN for social media. People don't relate well to social media. And then also connected to this, like, this thing where journalists don't always get it right and do honest reporting. They're biased and forget to put things in the news themselves. So what is the opposite of that? What is this exposing that, the author hasn't said? Any thoughts?
Like intention for journalism? They want to
Yeah, like journalists are intentional. Are intentional about what they include. And you can also, I think, think about like journalists are responsible. Journalists are responsible. Yeah. So we've got this, these are like, I think maybe not all, but some of the like assumptions that the author, that Pulsar has about her audience when she doesn't bother to go into a lot of detail about it. She mentions some things, but like she's kind of thinking like, okay, people are already kind of on board with me with these ideas, and she's sort of like reaffirming like some of these ideas with the examples that she gives, because she really wants to drive this point home that journalists are responsible. That's the place to go. All right. So, any questions about that? So we've got these two parts, A and B, which I've labeled here A and B. What are we focusing on? Are we focusing on the A or B? B. Yeah, so that's going to be kind of the most important part of your assumption paragraphs. It's still good, I think, to mention mention A, the first part that kind of leads you to B, because you're showing like, oh, this author has done a good job in some ways, but they've forgotten that some people might think this way, and they're being alienated by this article. So what I would say is, you want to focus on B. Let me see. You can mention A. And again, I'm getting that information from over this middle column. So something like because the audience and author think this article neglects to. So that's kind of one way to think of it. This article neglects to address A. Okay, so one thing I want to point out is the sheet that is being used for grading. I left out a very important word, which is right here when you're looking at the assumptions part. You have, does this essay mention perspectives the author might not be addressing? So that's, again, you have to think about what is the author not saying, like, or how would someone, like, like, who is not their focus that they might be, like, alienating. Any questions about that part? And again, I encourage you, one thing I think that might be a helpful exercise is once you have this structure, is to go back and look at the exam that got scored a 10 and kind of see like, oh, that's where they're talking about the assumptions. That's where they're talking about the strategies. Oh, look, they state the strategy, then they give a quote, a paraphrase, or a summary, and then they explain why the author used it. So you can kind of map these different parts. So you can think about, okay, this is going to be helpful for my own essay. All right. So conclusion. What do you put in the conclusion? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're thinking of. Sorry. Yeah. So it's evaluating the article, and you're going to want to bring in, the things that you've been discussing throughout the paper. So, like, you can think about it like, so would the audience answer the question? Would the audience be convinced by the strategies to believe the argument? So yeah, would the audience be convinced by the strategies to believe the argument? So you've got, the audience that you establish in your introduction paragraph. You're going to have to bring them here. I mean, you're thinking about them throughout the paper because you have to think, okay, what would the audience believe? How would they be convinced by the strategies? Or why would the author be using the strategies? So then you've got the argument that you establish also in the beginning. You're thinking about, these strategies that you have like body paragraphs dedicated to these strategies. And also, I mean, you can think about another question you can answer is like, do you think the author accomplished their purpose? So did they make, as a result, is the intended audience going to go and read this and, be convinced by the strategies and do what the author wants them to do? So again, that purpose, which you have in your introduction paragraph. So, kind of zoom out. All right, are there any questions about this? All right, so I hope that like what you can kind of see is you can look at some of the words, the parts that are in this column right here, this way that you're writing it. Look at how you can read for it, and then how you can think, what like notes you can make on your own so that you can successfully write your own paper. I would say try and come in with this already in your head, like as much as you can, so that that way you can focus on like, you know, reading the article and getting this information. I'm gonna go ahead and go away from that. Still got about 10 minutes, so let's go ahead and another thing I'm gonna look at, like here's the score that got a 10 where it says no more calls for elephants. So you got the title. An article published in the Los Angeles Times newspaper and composed by its own editorial board brings the issue of domestic elephant mistreatment to light and declares its support of the Los Angeles County's consideration of a measure that would promote domestic elephant welfare. So already in that first sentence, we've got, you know, the title, we've got the publication, the publisher. It doesn't mention really the like setting as much. I think that could be something that can improve it. But it does meet a lot of the other goals. So in writing the story that was most immediately available and applicable to Los Angeles residents, so it is considering this larger context. The LA Times editorial board, the author, hopes to bring some more awareness of the problem to the community and simultaneously create a broader case to support the city council measure. So there's their purpose. So they've got all their things in just 2 sentences, and that's one of the things that they mentioned in the videos. Like, it's better if you can kind of be brief and succinct. So let's go back. So now I hope you've got a good understanding of, like, you know, how to kind of bring those annotate. You read the article, you look for the certain parts, you make an outline, and then you write. That's why we recommend like 50 minutes for the reading and annotating, because once you get it all in order, you can spend 50 minutes writing and then 50 minutes editing. So here you've got the prompt. You can kind of see what's important. So we've talked a lot about how to do the prompt. We've mostly been talking about the prompt, a little bit about the reading, so you need to make sure, like, demonstrate that you're correctly understanding the article. What else is included as part of your grade? Structure, yeah, and that's something we've gone over, like you're including the right parts in each area. What else? Language, yeah. So these are some things to think about. Included in structure, so the point, information, explanation, and I have a video about it if you want to watch it. That kind of goes over, like, you introduce the idea, you give an example of it, you give information about it, and then you explain it. Some people feel like this is kind of a repetitive writing style, but this is the common American academic writing style that isn't necessarily in all academic writing styles, from country to country or culture to culture. I think, like, in England, they like don't do points; they just give the information explanation. So some people feel like this is a little bit repetitive, but it's going to be that it is how academic writing is done. So I recommend, you know, think about having a variety of sentence types, using complete sentences and subject-verb agreement. Those are, I think, 3 basic things to just kind of look out for. And then I say complete sentences, one non-embedded independent clause, 1 or more. So what does that mean? Can you want to explain that or give, like, examples of what this is not? How about because I said so? Does that work?
No.
I mean, in conversation it does, but that is not a complete sentence. That's a fragment because it's embedded. I said so, that's correct. But because that's a subordinator, that is okay in conversation, but it does not work in academic writing. So we're doing this because I said so. That's okay. We're doing this is non-embedded. It doesn't have a subordinator. It's not like relative clause or anything. So just make sure, find the subjects and verbs. Make sure that they're, like, you know, standing by themselves. There's at least in each sentence, at least one is standing by itself. I won't be grading you harshly on this, but that is something you should be working on because that is something that they consider when they're grading the WPA. Connected and cohesive writing, so that means like transition between the paragraph, so that like you kind of like finish your like previous paragraph and like remind your writer a little bit of what you were talking about before, or like having natural transition. Ideas are consistent throughout, so the argument that you mentioned in the first paragraph is the argument you mentioned in the final paragraph. You can vary the language, but make sure that you know it's still the same idea. And then this part, like demonstrating that you understand the article. Any questions about this? All right, final points. So this is from the video. What they say is plan your essay, watch the time, neatness is not a requirement, and practice. So like make sure it's legible, but otherwise you can cross out, you can like write words in, that's fine. Yeah.
What do you recommend to do for practice?
For practice, like go look at one of the articles from the WPA website, and let's see. There's some. Let's see how to prepare. Here's some reading samples. There's 3 different articles. So one of them we've already looked at a lot. The No More Curtain Calls for Elephants. But look at these other ones and see like, okay, you can even just try annotating it and see if you can hand write an essay. So that's a 2-hour commitment if you really want to simulate it. But that's what I'd recommend. See like, okay, what's difficult about this? What's easy about this? And maybe practice a little bit more. And if you want, you can try making an appointment with the Writing Center and see if they can go over it with you. But again, like thinking about how much time you want to spend on this. But this is one way you can kind of think about that's one way to practice. All right. So, and also after this class, they have a lot of workshops and things like that at the Writing Center that you can do and like get like one-on-one help with. Other details on exam day. Let me see what. It's next Thursday at 10:30. This classroom, and bring things to write with. I think highlighters and like stuff. You can mark up the article as much as you want. I'll bring an article copy, paper write-off, scratch paper, prompt, test rules. Turn everything in at the end. My goal is to arrive early, so 10:15 is earliest. You can bring English Only Dictionary. I'm going to inspect it, make sure you don't have any notes in there. Drinks and snacks are okay. It's 2 hours. I'll start handing out exams to 10:30 to students who put everything away. No notes or anything. The article will most likely be an editorial, like the WPA, so an opinion piece on the topic of news media. 600 to like 650 to 750 words. Yeah.
So we don't need to bring rubric?
No, you don't bring anything except for stuff to write with and like pencil, like erasers and stuff. But yeah, you don't need to bring anything to write with. Or sorry, you don't need to bring anything to write on, but you need to bring something to write with. Yeah.
And the article is a completely new article.
Yes. Yes.
We haven't looked at it before.
We have not looked at it all in this class. Yeah. So it's going to be a new article.
How long is it going to be? 2 pages?
It's going to be, yeah, like a page and a half. It's going to be 650 to 750 words. So like I'll try and like double space it and give generous margins so you can make notes and stuff.
How many minutes do you recommend for reading?
50 minutes for reading, annotating, and outline. 50.
50 minutes for reading and annotating.
Yeah, and planning. 50 minutes for writing. 20 minutes for editing. All right. Here's it. Like if you want your exam back, here's some details. Email me to make that, or you can, if you want, you can even bring an envelope with your name on it, and I can just stick it in there and mail it. I know this is a lot, but also another thing, please do the survey on web portal. Like that's how, be honest. Also, like that's how my teachers, or that's how my bosses know how I'm doing and what kind of a teacher I am. And they can, upgrade me, demote me, or whatever, depending on what people think.
Where can we find it?
It's going to be on web portal. I forget when it gets released, but it'll.
I think it's you have to do it before the grades.
I think so. Yeah.
Before the grades to be released.
Yeah, I think so. So please do that.
It's the same one.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then also I'll have an anonymous extra credit survey on Blackboard that you can submit online. These are the rules that are going to get passed out. It's 1:45. I'm aware of that, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But this is all the information. You have access to these slides. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, if you need to take off to your next class, go ahead. Thanks so much for a really engaging semester. I hope you learned something.
We enjoyed learning.
Good. I'm glad.
This is the last class, correct?
This is the last
So see you
one.
on Friday?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday. Yes, Thursday. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, don't come on Friday.
Did you